Hey, warrior saints. Good morning. God bless and keep all of you today. We are at week three of our sermon series on what does it mean to be a man. Week one, as you remember, we went through man in relation to God. Man in relation to God. And how man lives a crucifixional life in relation to God. Last week, we talked about man in relation to himself and how a man must live likewise a crucifixional life with himself. Next week, we're going to talk about man in relation to work, to his job, and the following week, man in relation to the world. So that leaves perhaps the most pivotal, most important conversation right now, man in relation to his wife. So with that being said, let's get after it. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. I'm going to start with this beautiful metaphor from one of the toughest, fiercest, manliest movies that really ever has been made. It's a great flick. It's definitely a guy's film, right? I think men across the world have loved this film for I don't know how many years, at least, probably 2 decades at least, right? It's a great film. Probably all of you have seen Disney's The Little Mermaid. What? Little Mermaid's awesome. It's a fabulous story, and we make jokes about it, but think about that story. I'm going to pick it apart. And you will come to see that indeed the hero of the story is not Ariel. But let's listen to the story. The way the story unfolds, and for those who haven't seen the movie, how have you not seen the movie, number one? But number two, I'm going to ruin the whole thing, so just deal with it. The story begins in the bottom of the sea, under the sea, below the world. And there are these half-human people, mermaids and mermen. And Ariel, she's the daughter, one of the seventh and youngest daughter of the king of the sea, Triton. And she aspires throughout the whole film to become fully human. She wants to ascend. She wants to ascend and arise from the depths of the sea and become a human being. She wants legs, right? That's how the story goes. She wants legs. She wants to become fully human so that she can stand. Now, her father doesn't like it. You know, it's better down here under the sea. But Ariel longs. In some weird sense, she is revealed to us through Disney as on her own journey on the way of the warrior saint to full greatness, right? And she's aspiring for it. And she goes up to the surface. She's not supposed to, because they want to keep her down in the bottom of the sea, almost like in this abysmal, this bottomless, all the way at the bottom. That's the idea. And she sees human beings and sees their stuff, and she wants to be like that. And her father says, absolutely not. So she trades her soul. To the evil sea witch, Ursula. Ursula says to her, I will give you legs so you can go up there, but you must give me your voice. And in this movie, the voice, it's this shining symbol for her soul. Right? Because Ariel was trying to ascend the road, the way of the warrior saint through earthly means. Really, in some sense, Ursula is symbolic of the devil, right? Through demonic means. And she goes up, and she becomes, fully human, gets legs, and she goes up, but doesn't really have her soul because her voice has been taken from her. She can't speak. She can't be creative in that sense. And the story unfolds, as those of you, I'm sure all of you know, by the sundown on the third day, she has to kiss the prince, the handsome, charming, strong, great Prince Eric, who's the prince of the land. He is the man's man. He is the king in waiting for all of the earth. And there's some trickery that goes on, and the evil sea witch Ursula pulls her away, and on the sundown, just as they're about for Ariel to become fully human, the sun goes down, and Ursula takes her into the depths of the sea, back into hell. And her father sacrifices himself to become imprisoned under Ursula. And Ariel, all of her distraughtness, all of her ascent, all of her aspiring and fight to ascend to the world of man, begins a battle against this Ursula, who has now, because she's taken the king in prison, takes his crown and his spear, and she becomes large and larger and larger. She becomes larger than life, right? Obnoxiously big. And she says, I am now the king of all the sea. That's how the story goes. And as Ariel's trying to stop this, something else happens. Something else happens. Prince Eric gets into a boat. Now, this boat had been sunken at the bottom of the sea, and the stern or the bow, I don't even know, whatever the front of it is, has been broken off, and it has a pointy, sharp spear at the front. And he drives this boat towards Ursula. And in the end, just at the right moment, in the nick of time, the man, Eric, turns the wheel, the boat shifts to the right, and it pierces Ursula, killing the monster, stopping the devil, if you will. And all of the people under the sea are freed. And in the end of the story, Ariel is able to attain her full manhood, her full humanity, and she gets legs and is able to live, in all Disney story fashion, happily ever after with the charming Prince Eric. Now, this story, I think, obviously is about a young woman, or at least a made-up young woman, Ariel. I think it does symbolize, in a real sense, all of us who are on the way of the warrior saint. But today, as we talk specifically about men, it is pretty clear to us that the man, to be a man, has a very specific role in the life of our wives as they ascend the way of the warrior saint themselves. It's not that Ariel couldn't have done it by herself. It's not necessarily that a woman could not aspire to greatness on her own. Indeed, she can. My father died when I was 7, and my mother did it by herself and is a fierce lion. It can be done. But that's not the point. That's not the point. We exist today, men, in our relationships with our wives, to be like Eric, so that we can help them slay that monster while they are ascending on their own path, their own way of the warrior saint. Now, the world doesn't want us to do that. The world doesn't like it. The world doesn't want us to be a part of that. You can see divisiveness, all over the place. Marriages, do you know, it's hilarious. Half of them don't survive. That's not Father Chris making that up. That's like data. Half of them don't survive, right? It's interesting, they say that even the divorce rate is down. Even at 50%, it's down. Yeah, because less and less people are getting married, right? So there's not enough of them to add to this increasingly growing divorce rate, right? I think all of that has to do with, I don't care about the data, it's heartbreaking, but I think all of that has to do with the fact that men are submitting to the way the world wants us to be husbands. And I'm saying today, Christ shows us a different way. It's a really funny way, because the way of the world is always to tell us, me, I. Right? And Christ is saying something completely different. And we hear it this morning in this gospel, this beautiful gospel. And as we know, through our sermon series, we've set this line from John chapter 1, where Philip and Nathanael come to Christ and he says, follow me. And the end of the story of John is the empty tomb. What stands in the middle is the cross. And here we are in the middle of Lent, and the cross is here. And Jesus Christ says, you want to be with me? You want to be like me? You want to go where I go? You want to do what I do? Do you want that? Then you have to do something very simple. You have to deny yourself. You have to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. And that means we've already seen it from Pascha last year, that road, that way through the cross ends in the empty tomb. But it doesn't mean that we can just jump over the cross. It means that if you want to be like Christ and you want to follow the way of the warrior saint, the cross is right smack in the middle. And so husbands, we are called to die every single day for our wives. How can you die multiple times, Father? When you're dead, that's it. It's over. They put you in the ground. That's not necessarily what I mean, all right? And I think you know what I mean. We must die daily for our wives. We see this further evidenced. Listen to this one from the great apostle Paul. And we read from chapter 5 of Ephesians at every Orthodox wedding. Every single Orthodox wedding. Paul says, and he's talking about Jesus Christ and the church, but he gives us some very, very powerful instructions. A great teaching. He says, hey. He didn't say hey. I said that. But he says, people, all right? Wives, submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. Okay, so we got that. That's a great sermon in and of itself. And then he says, husbands, love your wives. Now it's funny because women are bristling. There's even one I already saw bristle. What do you mean, wives submit to the husbands? It's a different story, right? It's a different story. If you think that Paul is a chauvinist, you don't know Paul, right? He's anti-man. He is. All right, that being said, wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. And that's where the bristle, all he has to do is love? I don't know. What do you mean all he has to do is love? How does he love? Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved us on the cross. And so we are all called as husbands to live crucifixional lives for our brides. That's what it means. You want to be a man? It ain't genetic, boys. That you may be a male, but you want to be a man? It implies necessarily a crucifixional life. And that's not me, that's Paul and Christ himself, right? And so with all of that being said, we come to the practical point today on the way of the warrior saint. What are we going to do and how do we do that? Because I know we get it. We're supposed to be sacrificial. We're supposed to be Christ-like. We are supposed to be crucifixional. So, Father, what does that mean? I'm going to tell you. And there are a million examples. There are millions. But I'm only going to pick on one today. And I think you will see, hopefully, you will see that by the end of it, that it can apply to anything that we do in our lives. But to be crucifixional for our wives means that we must put ourselves to death and protect her. In all things, to protect our beautiful brides. And I'm going to pick on 3 things to protect them from. 1, your mother. 2, your children. And 3, from the world itself. Right? Now, people are looking at me funny. Those on camera can't see how the faces are funny. What do you mean, protect them from your mother? Look, mothers are amazing, beautiful. There is no such thing that can ever replace a mother in anyone's life. In fact, we even put Christ's mother in the highest point in the church, behind the altar, because we know mothers are the source of life, the keeper of life. And mothers have let's be fair to our moms. Their first impression of us men is as a tiny, helpless little thing that can't speak, that can't eat, that can't sleep, that doesn't know what the word no means, doesn't know what the word yes means, that they must do all things for. And they become in their minds this loving reference, the woman in our life. And it is so for many, many years, until this pretty gal comes into the picture. And the mother, and I'm telling you, I see it happen time and time again. The mother all of a sudden, and it's not conscious, it happens somewhere inside. Who is this other woman taking away my son? Right? And that happens. And that happens. And we husbands must protect our wives. Not because our mothers are evil or wicked, but because their reference is the only woman in your life, and now they are no longer the only woman in your life, and not even the most important woman in your life. And you know what happens? I'm going to tell you a true story. I just mentioned it a moment ago. My mother, I love all of you who are moms, you're great, but my mom's the best. Really. She's a fierce lion. Having said that, I'm about to throw her under the bus. All right. And if you're watching, I love you, sorry. I got married, went on the honeymoon, came home, and something happened. I don't even remember what it was. And she got into it with my wife. And she yelled at her about something. And I tell them this story, neither of them even remember, I don't remember. But I knew at that moment I was at a crossroads, and I said to my mom, Mom, I love you. I respect you. You raised me as both father and mother. And I would give my life for you. But that's my wife. Don't ever talk to her like that again. Now, needless to say, there was not a lot of joy in the Salami household that day. There wasn't. But it showed her, and my mother, as many of you know her, is a saintly woman and loves her daughter-in-law, actually more than she loves her own son. And they talk on the phone more often, and they communicate more regularly, and they spend more time with each other than any of us do. Because at that moment, my mother realized that now I am, as a man, to protect my bride. And that means even, God forbid, from her. And it's tough, guys. It's tough. Look, that was probably one of the 3 hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. But I did it. And you know what? My relationship with my mother, or really, more importantly, my mother and my wife's relationship is way better than it ever could have been. Because they love each other, right? So number 1, we have to protect our brides from our mothers. Now, that doesn't just mean our moms, fathers too. Moms are great. I want to say it again, right? But the idea is there, right? And I know you all see it. And there are a lot of young ladies, yes, Father, they're nodding, all right? Number 2, we have to protect our wives from our children. And that doesn't mean that they're all little monsters. They're not. Some of them are, but most of them are not. They're beautiful, but they require so much from them, right? You can see it. It's an amazing thing how a child can be disciplined by the mother, spanked by the mother, and runs away crying. Where does the child return immediately? Back to the mother's lap. Because the child knows that in the mother's lap, in the mother's womb is life itself. There's nowhere else to go to find life, so they always come back to mom, even after a spanking, right? And that kind of hanging doesn't ever stop. That type of clinging never goes away. It is something that the child knows that life exists in the womb of the mother. But sometimes moms need a little bit of a break, because sometimes little people talk about things that bigger people aren't interested in, right? And so we have to protect them. Protect them. I'm going to tell you another true story. My children were 6 and 4-ish at the time. And they got into it with their mother about something. They were all fighting and screaming about something in the den. And I said, I'm going to keep my tongue for a minute and see how she handles it and whatever happens, and let's see. So then all of a sudden, I just had enough. And I said to them, hey, sit down right now and stop it. And they sit down. And they're looking at me. And I said to the girls, I said, who is that woman? And they said, that's Mommy. I said, that's not your mother. You can see it on their face. I said, who is that woman? I said, that's our mom. I said, that's not your mother. Who is that woman? I mean, we don't know who it is, right? I said, that's my wife, and nobody talks to her like that, right? Period. Now, the beautiful part of the story is at the end, my littlest Amuli comes to me, I'm sorry, Baba, I talked to Mommy. I mean your wife like that. Sweet angel. But, do you understand the point that we're making there? Like, sometimes dads, we want to be the good guy because we work hard all day and we come home, we want to play, and we don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. But mom/wife needs a little bit of protection. Not that she can't handle it. Not that she can't handle it. She handles it all day. And there are some moms who work all day and then come home and handle it. Even fiercer, right? But my point is, we must protect them. Take it up, and that doesn't mean that I'm telling you to go fight with your kids. That's not what I'm saying. But teach your kids, spend time with your kids, give your wife a break, have daddy-daughter dates, daddy-son time, whatever it may be. Give your wife a layer, protect. Not all the time, but make sure that you spend time to protect your bride, even from those beautiful little monsters who live in your home. Number 3. You know, as I tell all these stories, it's like this pattern of salami women. They're all after me. You can see it, right? Last. Protect your wife from the world. And I don't want you to stick her and stuff her in the closet and put a cocoon around her so that she doesn't go out and ever see the world. That's not right. Don't ever miss this, guys. Wives are usually smarter than husbands, usually more capable than husbands, right? It's true. They don't necessarily need us to put this bubble around them. But we protect them from the world in different ways, in a different way. At least this morning I want to offer this different way. And that is to lead them. To lead them. Not as the world would have you lead them, but to lead them in a very committed, serious, devoted, dedicated life on the way of the warrior saint. Don't let your wives be church widows, for God's sake. They come to church faithfully without you and pray for you because, as we said last week, you prefer to sit at home on the couch eating Doritos and watching the Dallas Cowboys play football. I'm shum, really. Lead your wives. Lead your wives by being men of God. Have prayer in your life. Have church on your Sunday calendar every week. Read your scriptures. Live a good life, and I promise you, they will see it, They will appreciate it and they will follow. Not because they need you, but because you gave them an opportunity to follow. Right? And that means that we've got to die to ourselves a little bit. All three of those examples mean we have to die to ourselves. We have to be crucifixional a little bit or a lot for ourselves for the sake of our brides. It's uncomfortable to defend your wife against your mother. Uncomfortable to defend your wife against your children. It's uncomfortable sometimes to defend your bride against the world and leave the comfort of your couch and your bag of Doritos and come to church. But I promise, beloved brothers, that if we do these things, you will have an army of fierce lions, warrior saints, women who are stronger, more intelligent, and will surpass you, children who will be like their mom in all of those good respects, who will be fierce lions themselves, warrior saints themselves. So all of that to be said, if we make that effort to be a man, not a male, you got that by your parents. To be a man comes by living a crucifixional life. And if we do that, we avoid all of the chaos, all of the suffering, all of the mayhem that the world is trying to throw on us. It may creep in here and there bit by bit, but nevertheless, we can see the way to overcome that. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves, and here I end. No life is perfect. No life is ever totally easy all the time. But we notice then that we have beautiful marriages. We don't have good marriages, we have great marriages. We don't have good conversations with our brides, we have great conversations. We don't just have another human being living in our house, we have a partner, a friend, a beloved. We then start to see that just as Ariel made it to the top of the surface of the water, to live as a full man, because her beloved Prince Eric was there to help her on her own fight, to help her on her own way of the warrior saint, so it can be with your brides, if we live that crucifixional life. May our great God and Savior Jesus Christ bless and keep you as you walk on the way of the warrior saint. Amen.